Scotland is dark, dank, and dreary at the best of times. But when you haven't a penny in your pocket to pay for your pint, that's when the weather gets dreich. Shortly after the Haiti earthquakes, Scotland and the UK were opening their hearts and their wallets to the people of Haiti, to the relief efforts that were happening. And I really, really, really wanted to contribute, but I was, as they say over there, skint. So one day, following a creative whim, I sat down on a cold Scottish sidewalk to beg for poetry for the people of Haiti. It was my lucky day that it was cardboard recycling that morning. And as I walked out of the backpackers in St. Andrews where I'd been staying, I got the perfect piece of cardboard to sit on and another perfect piece of cardboard to write a sign with. And I wandered off around St. Andrews to look for the perfect place to sit, to beg for poetry. Now, there's no signage which tells you which way to go when trying an endeavor like this. But I did come round a corner past the town square, and there was this radiant sunbeam shining onto the old stone brick of a beautiful church. Little patch of grass, black iron rails. And I thought, this is perfect. And I got out my bright red Sharpie, and I wrote, donate a poem. The word of the day is quake, and the goal is 100 poems. And I put the cardboard down, and I put the sign up, and I took my hat off, and I sat there to wait and see what would happen. The first person who walked past dug in his pocket and dropped a £1 coin in the hat. And I called out to his knees as they passed me walking. And I said, I want a poem, not a pound. And he laughed and kept going. But the second people to stop on that bubblegum-infested concrete sidewalk was a couple and their stroller. And the husband says, she'll write you a poem. And so I passed up my journal to her and a pen, and he went into his wallet. Within 10 minutes, I had one brand new, fresh, spontaneously written poem with the word quake in it, and more money in my hat than I made in an hour at my job. I was onto something. And then the third person came, and she was a police officer. And she says to me, can I see your license? Do you have a license? And I went, a license to collect poetry? Poetic license? She didn't laugh as much as you did. And she said, no, you need a license to collect money for charity on the streets here. And I said, well, I don't have one of those. Would it be okay if I stayed and the hat went away and I just collected poems? And I could see this befuddled look on her face, because I don't think it's in the police officer training manual as to how to deal with this particular situation. But she did say, so long as there's no complaints, you can stay. And so I stayed for a day of collecting poetry. By the end of the day, I had 78 fresh poems spontaneously written, all with the word quake in them, and I sat in the pub furiously typing them up, so excited by the engagement I'd had with people. On day 2, I woke up and thought, I'm off poem catching. Ha! And whilst I sat there, somebody said to me, what are you doing with these poems? And I said, I don't know. And he said, you should make a book. And I said, that's a good idea. And I said, how do you do it? And he said, well, you print on demand. And I said, okay, I'll do that. Shortly afterwards, somebody presented me with a photograph. It was a seed, a dandelion seed under a microscope. And I thought, this is perfect. I'm building something from nothing. And a seed, this is great. By the end of day 3, I'd sold 21 copies of a book that didn't exist. Now, 3 fabulous things came out of following that whim on that day in Scotland. The poem catcher was born. And I went on to go to Wimbledon, to go to the royal wedding, to go to a conference of mycologists, that's mushroom scientists and fungal biologists. And I've had 2,500 poems written for me out in the streets and at different events. One of the people who donated a poem for me in the very first day turned out to be a mayoress in an area called Argyll in Scotland. And she hosted Prince Charles at an official gathering and presented him with a copy of the book Quake, Built from Nothing. And the first 21 people, who were the early adopters, seed investors, they enabled me to print 100 books that I sold and rolled over to print the next 100 books that I sold, and within 6 weeks, a check for £500 was in the hands of SOS Children's Villages for their work in Haiti. I could never have guessed when I sat down on that dank, dreary Scottish day that I'd be able to contribute from my penniless state such a wealth of creativity, human interaction, and financial resource. So when the world offers you nothing one day, what is it you'll create?